This is ContactTalkRadio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Hing.fm, and UpSnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio. Welcome to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. Joan and Janet are subtle energy empaths who navigate consciousness. Their passion is to support you in your evolution. As consciousness, we are all one. One mind, one heart, free of all limitations. Experience this reality with us and discover how it can make a difference in your daily living. Join us in a state of grace as we explore, with warmth and humor, this thing we call life. Now, here are Joan Newcomb and Janet Barrett.
Welcome to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. We're your co-hosts, Joan Newcomb, coming to you from Tacoma, Washington, and my partner, Janet Barrett's coming to you from Portland, Oregon.
Hello, everyone. I think it's Portland. I had a hard time saying, so we'll have an interesting show today.
Oh, tell me about it.
Yeah.
Our topic today is gift out of the muck. And there is a muck of a lot of stuff showing up in the world today, and boy, do we ever feel it? And how can something icky actually be a gift? So stay tuned, because we're going to talk about bigger ways to see and experience all this muck that's being revealed and released at this time.
Right. So, and here's a way to connect with us beyond the show. You can join us at our website, www.consciousconversationswithjoanandjanet.com. And you're going to find all our podcast of this show. We have a couple of years of that on there. You'll find information about both Joan and my blog that we both write and the updates there. You're going to also find out about the meetups that both Joan and I participate in. And then we got all the Facebook, Twitter, and good stuff that you want to tell us all about. Right, Joan?
Well, yes. And we are on Facebook. Guess, Janet, guess. Guess what our Facebook group is called?
Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet, I think, right?
Yeah, you're doing so good today. And Janet, how did they find you on Facebook?
Janet Barrett, I think it is.
You're so good. Now this is a little trickier. How do they find you?
Joan Newcomb, whatever it is.
Joan Newcomb.
I'm totally blanket.
Joan Newcomb's good enough. That's good enough. And so now Twitter, we're on Twitter, and our show name was too long to stick on Twitter, so we're just at Joan and Janet on Twitter. And I'm at Joan Newcomb, all run together on Twitter. And then Janet, what are you on Twitter?
I am Janet, so it's at Janet Beyond, I think it is what the correct.
That's right. Any century now will drag you into Twitter.
Really? And the only thing you're going to find there are my consciousness cookies for the day, everybody. I don't bother people, but I do like to send you out a little tweak reminder about being conscious. So
I have to say, Twitter is such a stream of information that it is actually a relief to have a little bit of consciousness in there. So your consciousness cookies are definitely nourishing people who are on Twitter there. Yes. And then the show is on YouTube, and you can find it at Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet on YouTube. And I'm also on YouTube, but you can find me by my name on YouTube, but you can also find me on our website. Again, that is Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet, because I post all my weekly video blogs on there. And you mentioned that we have meetups, and Janet hosts meetups in her lovely home on Tuesday evenings and on Thursday afternoons. I'm guessing not tomorrow, though, because you're busy. But it's a really lovely experience. She lives out near Reed College. I think I said that right.
Yeah.
And then I do mine around the Puget Sound, but I'm doing an experiment. I am doing a Zoom virtual meetup this coming Saturday, November 18th, from 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. I think that's midnight in England right now, unless some times have changed. But this is for people who can't physically make it to my other meetups and have been curious and would like to participate in a conscious conversation or a conscious coffee, I'm calling it. We can all just bring our own coffees to it. It also is for people around the Puget Sound that the weather has gone crappy, or I'm not going to Olympia anymore. It's harder to get up to Bellevue. I haven't found a good location in Bellevue, that sort of thing. So if you have come to my meetups, this is, and they're not in your city anymore, this is an opportunity to meet virtually. And if you're out of our range and would like to come to our meetups, this is the opportunity for you. So you can find that on our meetup page on Conscious Conversations with JoanandJanet.com. That's this coming Saturday, November 18th, 3 to 5 p.m. It is a coffee level of meetup. I would say most of my library meetups have been free, but the ones we have at the coffee shops go deep dive, and I do more teaching on them. And so it is a $10 payable through PayPal, and there'll be a link there to when you sign up. You'll get sent the contact information.
Sounds good. Good ways to deal with the weather, for sure. And then you have an opening in your 12 Weeks to Transformation program, don't you?
Well, I do. If you really want to work with me individually, I have 12 Weeks to Transformation. It's a private mentorship program. And if you want to jump in right away, you can take advantage of it. I do have this one slot open. I am also developing something brand new for January. I will be revealing some goodies to people. If you're on my mailing list, I will reveal some goodies to you starting the day after Thanksgiving. So there's some special opportunities coming. And if you are really interested in that, you can go to joan-newcomb.com and sign up for my mailing list to get these kind of announcements. Or if you're following me on Facebook or on our group on Facebook, you'll get these special announcements as well.
All kinds of good stuff to get through the holiday seasons that's coming up in the beginning of winter and all that. And especially in relating to our topic, the muck.
Yeah.
And it's out there and we're in it, and which is good. I mean, this is all the stuff that's coming up is great. It's how we deal with it. It gives us an opportunity to look at those things that we've put away, compartmentalized, buried, whatever it is, and how to, in this time, release it, transform it, and bring it into the state of what we call a gift, right? And it's a gift of awareness. So good stuff happening. May not feel like it, but good stuff is happening.
Yes. And it is like the stuff that is coming to the surface. It's like discovering that you have mold in your home, kind of thing. And what do you do when you have mold? You have to take everything apart and clean it all out in order to restore the house. You think of all these houses that have been in, Hurricane Harvey or Irma or Maria, they're going to have some major mold issues. We're here in the Northwest with mold issues, and it's just, for me, that's an analogy for the some of the kind of stuff that's coming to the surface.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff. We've really seen it in groups with people. We're really seeing it in ourselves. I know you're going through stuff. I'm certainly going through stuff. And it's how this is different. How this time, in this moment, is different than before. And as we tend to revisit, because the stuff that's trapped energy and things like that, how to look at it this time, not from the emotional encoding that we've put on the issue, but free from within the state of heart-centered awareness, the field of unified consciousness, gives us the gift, that in itself is the gift of being able to experience and notice what those elements are that are within us, and put them in a more user-friendly position.
Tell me more about user-friendly positions.
Well, I think we encode, and so encoding is how we encapsulate in experience, our experience, and whether we're going to put it in a good, bad, ugly, whatever condition that we're going to label it. What was it you asked me? Well, this stuff's really tracking well. They just go flying by. Wow. Okay.
So here's the thing. It's a lot of people, there's a lot of muck coming to the surface. Mm-hmm. It's like our really core stuff that is having a light shone on it, and it is really uncomfortable. People are really triggered by it. It's all in the process of being healed. It's all in the process of being cleansed.
Yeah.
And it's, how do we respond to this as consciousness? And hold that thought, Janet, because I just realized what time it is. What time is it, boys and girls? We have to stop for a commercial break. So stay tuned, because you're listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet, and we're talking about gift out of the muck when we come right back.
Would you like a fresh approach to the challenges you are dealing with? Take a journey into your enlightenment with Janet Barrett. Janet is a subtle energies empath, accessing the field of potential with warmth, humor, and support. She will help you to hear what your inner voice is saying. She will share with you how to appreciate who you are now and offer you new ways to understand and transform your issues. Reach her at www.janetandbeyond.com. That's janetandbeyond.com. Again, janetandbeyond.com. Transformation is possible. You can enjoy new outcomes in your current experiences. They can happen in the blink of an eye. Is your soul calling you to do something more meaningful with your life? Do you feel crazy for wanting to quit your secure job? Perhaps you are waiting until you retire to do what you love. Maybe you are too daunted to follow your dream. If any of these match your life, then Joan Newcomb's Purpose and Passion Coaching Program is just for you. In just 12 weeks, you will discover who you essentially are and why you are here. Learn to live as your greater self and navigate with conscious mastery. Go to joan-newcomb.com. That's joan-newcomb.com for all of her coaching programs.
You are listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. To reach our program, please send questions and comments to consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. That's consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. Now, back to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet.
Welcome back. You're listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. I'm your host, Joan, along here with Janet, and we are talking about gift out of the muck.
Right. Okay. So what I was tracking was the encoding is the emotional state that we had the experience originally in. All right. And then that determines where we're going to stuff it, where we put it and what we can do with it. And so in this time, what's available to us is as consciousness and that heart-centered awareness, we can look at that, free the emotional off of it, and just look at the dynamics and the energy that's present, and then reorganize how we want to be with it. And that's what's exciting about now, is that we have that available to us to do.
What comes to mind as you're doing that, I was just imagining along with what you were saying, is that I brought it out and you said something to the effect of, something would determine where we stuff it. But what we're doing now is we're bringing it out into the light. And what I notice is as you bring light to it, it may be uncomfortable at first, but it's like that light is like a laser and it disintegrates it. It dissipates. It goes away.
Yeah.
I think we're so used to living with this discomfort or living with this irritation or this thing that's under our skin, so to speak, for so long that we can't even imagine what it would be like to be free of it.
I think, you come into this world and in that state of innocence, experiences happen and it creates displacement, and we were talking about this, with what to do with what we are experiencing as that beginning hatched earthling. And so
beginning hatched earthling, what?
Yeah. Who I am at age 1 is different than who I am at age 36, I would think. And how I'm functioning with dealing with incoming information and stimulus and what to do with it. How do I process it, right? And you have this blotter that we are. We just take it all in, and then we start to learn distinctions, and we have environments that say be this way or that way, and this is what you do with it. And, we've all been in a place or heard, well, this is how we deal with it. And so you fit in, and that doesn't match up with how you've been holding your information. So what happens is that we got all these layers and layers and layers of energy dynamics surrounding something and an event or an experience or a sensation. And we've been dealing with them, and we've had a storage of them. And a lot of it is unrecognizable, but then when you hit it in that place of where the center of it is, where the truth of it is, that cuts through everything, and you go, oh. And that's the thing that happens with the hashtags and, all this information that we are now have accessible to us to participate in. And you go, oh, that triggers something. And, oh, I forgot all about that. How often do we hear that when we work with people? And it's just bringing it out of what Greg Braden used to call the gift out of the wound. And yes. I think that's really what this is. That's what consciousness does for us, right?
Yes. And I've got two things going on here at once, because it became a lot more painful when you called it a wound than when we called it muck. Something coming out of the muck. Mm-hmm. And the gift is supposed to allow for appreciation. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes our resistance about the pain is actually more painful than the actual pain.
Mm-hmm. And then you can feel, you can feel how we are very clumsy in being emotional creatures, I think, effective emotional creatures in a way that we can use them well. We're pretty mucky with our emotions. But it's also, so someone says it's a wound, and I feel that. And maybe it wasn't a wound. Maybe it was not to that degree, but because now there's this energy about wound, it goes, it starts to work, and it starts to fester, and it starts to become one of those things. And it's kind of like the splinter in the thumb, right? It can just the body starts to react to something that can't get out. And, I think that's what we're bringing to ourselves. There's all these things under the surface that are really now to the surface. They're coming to the surface. And that's all the stuff shooting around the room here. Because it's like you say, okay, let me look at this. And boom, there it is. But that is what the field's about.
What comes to mind is how to have some neutrality while all of this is going on. Mm-hmm. And if it's possible to have neutrality within the mess of emotions.
I think you have as much neutrality as you can allow yourself, right? And allowing your awareness of it. Consciousness, that's why we look to be viewing our humanity from that context. That's where the grace is. So if you're looking and you acknowledge yourself as having access to being warmth, support, non-judgment, then you're looking at your information that you've got stored, maybe appreciating it in a different way. You're freeing up that emotional encouchment, encoding, and it's just, all these different ways. Look at all these people that we're putting in that feel wounded in some way. And when you can feel it that way, that's the difference between, look how fucked up we are, pardon my French. There's a difference in that. So it's how we're holding our own selves and our awareness and what we speak and reflect back. I think that's important.
I know what I was doing this morning is I was aware of the emotionality going on, and there's this part of me that can be my own parent.
Mm-hmm.
And when I realized that, I can hold space for all the emotions going on, and then be the parent that's driving the van.
Is it a good parent? What kind of parent is it?
Well, it's me being the good parent, because it's me. I am the parent of myself.
The good parent as opposed to the bad parent.
Well,
that's interesting. See,
well, so this is interesting too, Janet, because I am a parent,
mm-hmm.
right? And
right,
I am a parent,
right.
and being a parent to my children gave me the opportunity to be different than the parents I had. When I am parenting myself, this lets me be the grown up. This lets me be the nurturing parent. And it's funny because I wouldn't even ask myself whether I'm being the good parent, the bad parent, except that if I look in the past when I used to get burned out and I ignored myself and all, I was certainly treating myself like a bad parent. But when you're being conscious about this gives you the opportunity to respond as a parent to the aspects of you that are hungry, angry, lonely, and tired, and how to care for yourself in that way.
Right. Because for a lot of people that, they're going to go one way or the other with that. And so it's just being clear that, for me, the word has always been champion. Having each of us need a champion, right? It's that stands for us. Doesn't matter. Doesn't care what we do. It's just there. And we can go into all kinds of judgments about our behavior and our expression and what we seem to epitomize. And as consciousness, it doesn't play favorites. So it's what would it be like to have had a champion when one was young? And sometimes a godparent, or grandparent fits into that role sometimes, because that relationship with parents and children can be full of lots of things, right? So,
but we're meandering now to the past, and what I was doing was how to respond in the present moment to the aspects of myself that are feeling very emotional, and how do I take care of myself here and now? So how do I have that neutrality, which is really myself as consciousness? It's bringing consciousness and bringing presence to it. But I was speaking about it in kind of a more simplistic way than just respond as consciousness kind of thing. That you can have a compassionate neutrality to yourself and the rest of the world when you're operating as consciousness, and that really is like being your own parent here and now.
All right. And just notice that, right? Notice, listeners, how you're doing out there with that, right? It is the warmth, support, non-judgment. Because, like in group last night, we're all very good at feeling things and noticing how we organize ourselves to a certain degree. And it's being in that space and being accepting, creating serenity about whatever the past was, because this is the past. And so, that gift and muck and all that, the gift is pretty much the future of it, right? It's the now of it as opposed to the reference you had held it in. I think that's important to be aware of.
The other thing that occurs to me is to realize that not all the muck is yours. Even though you could say this is all your creation of your consciousness, it doesn't have to be yours. You don't have to identify or let in everybody's muck. There can be some differences. And so, some people may have not had sexual abuse, but they might have had emotional abuse. And so, they don't have to let in the experiences that other people are going through for that, but they can relate to it by saying, well, my boss was emotionally abusive, or my parent was emotionally abusive, or my siblings, or whatever you want to say, whoever they were. You weren't you weren't groped, but you were verbally attacked or something.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all the fun stuff that's coming to the surface. And then a way to step back and experience it as consciousness, here's a way I think of it too, is that in our process of expansion, greater consciousness is coming into form, and it's like bringing a greater light into the world. And what does light do? When you turn the lights on in a room, it reveals where you haven't dusted. It bringing more light reveals the shadows, but then it also dissipates the shadows. Mm-hmm. So there is something about just bringing consciousness and presence to what is happening now. And hey, you know what? That also reminds me of staying present, staying in present time. You can stay the age you are now as opposed to being the age you were when that happened.
There's always going to be specifics, that are unique to each of us. And we can label those experiences and sensations and give them labels and titles. The challenge is to notice that and observe that as consciousness. Those are just labels. Those are just experiences. And free up into what's really going on is how we respect ourselves. How each of us as consciousness, I think that part of those calm and serenity and peace also has that element of respect and appreciation and gratitude. And a lot of what we're seeing out of this muck, whether it's ours or someone else's, and how we each collect stuff and energies and vibrations resonate and collect together, is at heart what's there. Is there care? Is there respect? And when you start to pull that out of it, the rest of it kind of shakes down. A lot of it starts to release, transcends itself.
I'm just noticing that ripple have a ripple effect to people, and it's interesting. Even if your listeners aren't able to follow along with the language, because sometimes the language is different. You're energetically following along. So it actually can be listening to our show and to either of us talking, because it's sometimes hard to tell the difference. But either of us talking is you can just allow the shift to happen. You can allow the change to happen, and you can notice the ripple effect that participating in our show, because if you're listening, you're participating, can happen in your life. There can be a ripple effect of change.
Well, as opposed to all that buzzing that was going on, those fireworks shooting off, it feels like there's a calm that's present now. That sacredness that we are saying is in all of us. You can feel that. I think it's see, that's releasing the emotional content around stuff. That's what's relaxing, because now it's just information. And it's like, oh, okay, those are energy. And what else would I like to do with it? And I think that's for anyone who's listening at any time, in any place and space. You can feel that. You can, the defensives go down.
The defensives go down. Is it just that you relax your resistance?
Could be, probably so. Also, when you relax the defensive, that does not mean you go to vulnerable. Vulnerable is not that. What it just means is that there's openness. So in that sense, yeah, the resistance is shifted.
Yeah, we're used to responding from defensiveness, or we're used to coming from the mindset that we need to shield or protect. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, is not coming from consciousness.
No, consciousness is about integrity. And integrity in the sense that throughout the whole system, information flows. And it doesn't stop anywhere, and the matrix still holds itself, but because it is something, but it's all about potential. So yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, somebody asked me the difference between integrity and morals,
Mm-hmm.
and I was thinking, first I was going off on a kind of a tangent about religious morals versus integrity, and then I settled down to realizing that integrity is really more about inner truth, and morals is about values. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I use integrity in the sense of how the system holds together. So I don't need to defend if my system has integrity. That means that the energy coming at me, great, fine, and there it goes. It's not something that I have to hold in me, unless that's the way I've got it set. So integrity is that you take a lick and you keep on ticking kind of thing. And, in this context for me. So, you can shake, if you take the foundation down, then you don't have anything. You have a pile of rock. But if you have a system built, there was a great show on Beijing last month about how they built this city of Beijing on wooden. All the temples and everything are wood, and they put that through earthquake.
Oh, that's the Forbidden City, isn't
the
that
Forbidden
like on
City.
PBS? So it wasn't all of Beijing, but it was
right.
The Forbidden City aspect
city
and
part
how
of
it
it
survived these devastating earthquakes.
It was just absolutely,
right.
Yes, because everything was allowed to move.
Yeah.
And you go, that's it. It held its integrity because it was allowed to move, right? And that was okay, there it is in a physical way, and so,
that's a really great analogy, and and my husband's an architect, so he's fascinated watching it. And so here's some interesting things about that: is that these tree trunk pillars weren't anchored to the spot; they're so big and heavy, they just stood on the spot, and that means that when the earth shook, there was space for them to move. And then the rooftop was this incredible interweaving construction that was incredibly heavy, which weighed down on top of it. But the way the interweavings were,
it was like Lincoln Logs. You know how you would put that. So nothing was nailed, nothing was made to stick together. It was built to lay together, to be together, and that's what it demonstrated. It was
we can look at how that's a great analogy for our body construction or our energy construction as greater consciousness comes into form, and the earthquake is really it's having a seismic reaction to the increased consciousness coming into form, and anything that is anchored in the old way, anything that is out of integrity. So anything that's solid and resistant, I was going to say more about resistance, but anyhow, anything that's resistant, that's what's going to crack and fall over. But if you can have your own it's anchored with mobility, I guess, flexible, anchored without being rooted. I don't know what would you say about that?
Well, man has a wonderful way of building stuff so it doesn't move, right? Then you have the Bedouin who puts the tent up and it's on the road all the time, right? It's moving from here and there. And so it's how you view, your attachment to earth and place and space and self and all this. And I love the idea of the different ways you can see how this dynamic plays and what's the construct you're building. We have the challenge, I think, as humans and anchored to 80% of our stuff comes through our eyes, that the solid, right? And you talk about density and effort a lot. That we're solid, and we're not. We're made of this collection of electrons, a cloud of possibility hanging in space, and it changes all the time, and it's always there. So it's how you view yourself. It's how you view yourself in your circumstances, in your environments. And are you in a state of rhythmic flow, free flowing rhythmic? Are you solid as a rock, right? And the only thing that's going to move that rock is a landslide. Okay. That's just different ways to encode our experience here. So, and consciousness is just going to say, okay, let me throw the rock up.
So the whole thing about resistance and protections and all that, if you can just feel what happens to your muscles when you're resisting. And, if you're going in, for an injection and you tense that muscle, it's going to hurt a lot. But if you're relaxed with it, then that energy just kind of moves right through. And so the strongest form of protection is really non-resistance.
Right. And the martial artists know this, right?
Yeah.
They use the flow of energy, the solidness that's coming at them or whatever the dynamic is, and they utilize it as opposed to have to beat their chest and be knocked over from it, in some kind of contest. And it's just different ways that we can be in our world, and be out of the muck. And, there's always going to be muck. I have no problem with muck because it's kind of interesting and fascinating and it keeps me from being bored. The challenge is when I really want to revel in it. and there are a lot of energies that like being in the muck. So, they're happy. But, there's all different kinds of places.
Well, you think, when you go to some kind of theme park, or we have this one here that Wild Waves, and
the water park up there.
Yeah, you're gonna get wet if you go to that. So if you, as consciousness, create a playground such as Earth is, that there's gonna be muck, and that's part of the fun of it. That's part of the entertainment aspect, is to come into this muck when you're naturally pure consciousness and experience the density and effort, the time and space restrictions, and that it's sometimes going to be mucky.
It was real important last night. We had a nice group here. Well, we always have a nice group, but the group focus was really about, in this conversation, how we judge where we find ourselves to be. And that's not consciousness. That consciousness can appreciate that, but realize in that loving context or in that neutral, warm support, non-judgment, so you're not going to judge how you judge. So consciousness doesn't do that. Grace is about, well, what if it was okay that this is all you did? Who's saying you have to do something? What if it's just about being the witness? What if it's just about, and then when you go that place, you start to see the pressure and the resistance and all those dynamics that we engage in that have maybe been holding things in place or stuck or whatever our sense of it is. And so in releasing judgment about who you think you are, where you're supposed to be, blah, 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 which is all just stories, makes a big difference in this conversation, I think.
Yes. Yes. Well, I'm definitely feeling some shifting and swirling around. I noticed this yesterday in the midst of all this really heavy duty emotional muck stuff that's going on. I felt an internal shift, and it was like an internal returning to clarity is what I'd say. And I like to think that, you and I are on the leading edge of things, and so if we're getting hints of that, it must mean that, daylight is coming out of this dark night of the soul people have been happening. I do feel like some tremendous changes are happening to people, and I also feel like there's that we are emerging more, not necessarily stronger, but more more whole and complete from it.
Yeah. One thing that does come to mind, and we talked a little bit about this before, was the displacement, the sense of displacement that has been showing up. And it's either been there all your life or it was triggered by an event or an experience. And that's one thing that maybe, and so you can feel it as shock, and you can feel it as lots of different things, and it's the shock that never stops and it still echoes, is go back to yourselves as heart-centered awareness, field of unified consciousness, and allow that to just be. And notice, what if you did feel connection differently? Because that's what'll happen. All this is about, you're going to feel connection differently. You're going to have a different sense of sharing. You're going to have a different sense of community. You're going to have a different sense of self and how you are with yourself. And so that's the wonder of all this. And that has been something that people are coming out of, like a long sleep or this displacement. And it happens in a number of different ways. So just to observe that, notice that.
That's definitely how we're experiencing it, as a waking up from a long sleep. Mm-hmm. And I always like to reframe it from a perspective of consciousness, because we're always thinking that we're our bodies becoming more awake, and really it's consciousness coming more into form. So if you imagine that you were, slipping on a tight pair of jeans or something, it's like you're coming more into that restrictive body, but it turns out that it's made of spandex, and there's more space for you to come more in. And that's how my experience of coming into form is, that we can bring more of our awareness into form. And I think our bodies and our energy systems are changing to encompass that. In the old days when I taught, used to go, only 10% of you can really come into your body. And now it just feels like there's more.
Yeah. Funny how we have these beliefs that run around there. So for me, when I have that conversation, it's about unfolding from within. And that, what the terminology you're using, mine is coming from within, and that opening up and that awakening and to something it's already there, right? And because consciousness was first, and then we show up within that, and we all hold that within us, and that's what we're tapping into. And it's just, and both approaches are appropriate or not appropriate or whatever they are. It's just different ways of noticing and embracing how you experience life. And it's giving all of us permission to just have our experiences and become aware of what is possible. Because, the Muck is really about that lotus blossom, which opens up, unfolds, and is this enlightenment. That comes out of the deeper the muck, the more beautiful the flower, which is really interesting. And so it's how to take all that and make that there is something beautiful there. And we just observe it in its two different states. And so that's what we're inviting as consciousness. We take that stuff, and we have this glorious, incomparable lotus blossom that opens up on the top of the water. And
it's taking the muck and realizing it's fertilizer.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and so on that note, I just want to let you know that it's time to take another break, but you're listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. And stay tuned, because right after these messages, we'll be talking more about the gift out of the muck.
Would you like a fresh approach to the challenges you are dealing with? Take a journey into your enlightenment with Janet Barrett. Janet is a subtle energies empath, accessing the field of potential with warmth, humor, and support. She will help you to hear what your inner voice is saying. She will share with you how to appreciate who you are now and offer you new ways to understand and transform your issues. Reach her at www.janetandbeyond.com. That's janetandbeyond.com. Again, janetandbeyond.com. Transformation is possible. You can enjoy new outcomes in your current experiences. They can happen in the blink of an eye. Is your soul calling you to do something more meaningful with your life? Do you feel crazy for wanting to quit your secure job? Perhaps you are waiting until you retire to do what you love. Maybe you are too daunted to follow your dream. If any of these match your life, then Joan Newcomb's Purpose and Passion Coaching Program is just for you. In just 12 weeks, you will discover who you essentially are and why you are here. Learn to live as your greater self and navigate with conscious mastery. Go to joan-newcomb.com. That's joan-newcomb.com for all of her coaching programs.
You are listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. To reach our program, please send questions and comments to consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. That's consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. Now, back to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet.
Welcome back. You're listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. I'm your host, Joan, along here with Janet, and we have been talking about gift out of the muck.
What's your gifts? What do you notice, Joan?
The gifts from my muck, you mean?
Yeah.
My mucky little gifts. Well, that's, this is very interesting because I was kind of reflecting back on the overarching aspects of my life, and there have been some pretty mucky experiences out of it. And one ringy-dingy. So the thing about it, though, is my essential life purpose is that of a light bringer. And so what do is I bring light into the darkness. And it wouldn't make sense for me to continuously be in the city of light and the day of light and in light things. It's only natural to be in circumstances where, dark is being revealed and dark comes to the surface. I think where I am now with all of that is that, it just comes down to the core essence, which is love. And that's what gets revealed after all the muckiness, dries off and flakes away, I guess. How about you, Janet?
Well, I'm a never-ending process of experiences. So, in doing this work and identifying that that's my alignment, that allowed everything to realign. And that's in that heart-centered awareness field of unified consciousness that I am much more than I think I am. And if I just let go of what I think I am and what I think I know, the world just becomes much more of a magical place. And those references that I've been holding all my life in the past stories, just start to shift. And still perhaps hold the space, the container, but I'm accessing more of the spectrum that's available instead of a focus point. And it's just certainly transformed my life. And there's more power to it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's all unfolding, and it's all unfolding, and it's actually all perfect, even if it's never perfection.
Well, I think that's illusion too. I think everything is perfect. Yes. And that's what we can't get over, right? Because how could this be perfect?
We're always striving for something when it already is.
Right. And it's already there, and that's the gift. That's the gift of awareness, is that, oh, this takes me down this path. Okay. What if I want to go down a different path? Oh. And it's your attachment, it's your relation, your own relating to how you are creative and what you're doing and perhaps what being alive is about and the wonderful exploration that comes from that. So for me, it's a journey of enlightenment. So not the journey to enlightenment, is the journey of enlightenment that we are.
And the way I would see that is that we are light and we are enlightenment. And so it's not even there's no time or space or distance. It's maybe not even a journey, but that's another topic for another day. How about inviting folks to go deeper with us and connect with us beyond the show?
Well, they can do that at our www.consciousconversationswithjoanandjanet.com. And now Joan writes wonderful blogs on Fridays. I write on Mondays. And so there's always new information out there. And you can find it there. Also about our meetups. I do it here in Portland, Oregon. She does it up there in the Puget Sound area of Washington. And then also about our sessions, because we both work with people in different ways and different times. And yeah, lots of good ways to.
Right, and all our podcasts are there. You can listen to all our shows. You can find it there. You can also pretty certain there are links to us on Facebook and Twitter there as well. And you can subscribe to us on YouTube. The show is on YouTube, Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. I'm on YouTube, Joan Newcomb, but you can find me also on our website, Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet, because I post my video blogs there each week as well. We have, you mentioned we have meetups. Your meetups are on Tuesday night and Thursday afternoon, though tomorrow, November 16th, I know you're not going to be available. So, but everything's back to normal on the 21st, I trust?
Yep, should be. I'm looking forward to it.
And then what are you doing about Thanksgiving?
I've been invited. Tom and I have been invited with friends because I'm going to be kind of out of it for a little while. So it was like, what a gift. How wonderful. Thank you. I'll let you take care of me. And
all right. So no Thursday afternoon meet up for that one either, but next Tuesday is the time people could come and find you. And for me, I'm going to be doing a virtual meetup this Saturday. From 3 p.m. Pacific, I'm doing a virtual meetup online, which means that if you're not physically in the Northwest, come join us for the virtual meetup. If you're in the Northwest and I haven't been in your city for a while, come join us there and we can all connect virtually and have some really deep dive conversations. And that's Saturday, November 18th, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. And that's $10. Just go to the website, Conscious Conversation with joanandjanet.com, and go to our meetup page, and there'll be a link there to join us.
You know, that you bring something to mind, Joan, that a reason to be in state as consciousness is that becomes the leading within oneself. And then the physical follows through, because thought is pretty much unconscious in us. And consciousness embraces that thought and goes, really? You like that idea? Okay. And then whatever manifests, and it's just different ways of, you have all your answers. It's not so much about us. It's about you being in that place where you can tag that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you like the stuff we're talking about, if you're interested in learning how to navigate your life as consciousness, you can go to my website, www.joan-newcomb.com, and look at my coaching programs.
And you could look at my consciousness cookies, different places.
That's right.
And they're on LinkedIn, they're on Facebook, Twitter, all those places. And it'll just give you a reminder. Sometimes there's quite a statement, and sometimes there's those succinct little things, but there's always something there to ponder and notice. We look to be connections for you.
Well, we'd like to thank you all for joining us, because it doesn't matter when you're listening to us, whether you're listening to us live right now or if you're listening to us as a podcast right now. It's all the now, so you have helped create this morphic field, this wonderful energy that we have here today. We really appreciate your participation.
It's been delightful. Thank you. Everyone, have a great holiday season.
You've been listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. I'm your host, Joan, and here with Janet. And tune in next week, same time, same channels.
You've been listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. And thanks so much for helping to co-create the show, no matter if you're listening live or on demand. You energetically contribute to our collective experience. Joan and Janet love to hear from you and invite you to email your comments and ideas for them to explore each week. Contact them at consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. Tune in next week for another great show, and until then, keep enjoying this wonderful adventure we call life.